All right. Hello, everyone. We're so excited to have you here with us today. My name is Hong Lin, and I'm part of the Careers and Professional Development team here at WGU. Today, we are closing out our Spring Career Quest season with a really special session on the topic titled There's Power in the Pivot. This session is all about what it can look like to take chances, make bold moves, and pivot with purpose and give yourself a chance to try something new. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce today's speaker, one of our very own WGU alumni, Dr. Krystel Hurd. I had the chance to connect with Dr. Hurd through LinkedIn, actually, and hear a little bit more of her story from how she got started to her bold career moves and academic moves that helped shape where she is today. And her journey is one full of curiosity, courage, and also intentional growth and the willingness to bet on herself. But I'll turn it over to Dr. Hurd here to share a little bit more about her story. But thank you so much for being here. We're super excited for your time and just your willingness to give back to the WGU community. So I will pass things over to you, Dr. Hurd.
Thank you so much for the beautiful welcome. Um, First, I want to say thanks to everyone for joining in. This is my first time doing a webinar in this environment, so I'm glad that it's with WGU because WGU does have a soft spot in my heart. So I'm happy for that. But yeah, thank you guys for joining. I will say this may be a little bit different than the typical webinar, but we're going to go ahead and get started. I'll start off with telling you all a little bit about myself and then walk through my career and my educational journey. It's full of twists and turns, so I feel like the topic being there's power in the pivot is perfect for this session today. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Of
Looks
course.
great.
And after the beautiful introduction, of course, you can see that this is our topic for today. We're going to be discussing how I've navigated my career and reinvented everything, from my education, the type of roles I was in, and all of that. But I did that with purpose. So let's get started. Today, I'll discuss my background and my career journey. I'll discuss, my bachelor's degree, my time at WGU, and as well as my doctorate from South College. And I'll also discuss with y'all some key insights in what a pivot truly means and what you can learn from being able to pivot. And also give you guys some advice on things you can consider on your personal journey, and also give you some ways to connect with me outside of the webinar. So little about me. I am born and raised in Alabama. I'm a mom of three. I have an 11-year-old son, 9-year-old daughter, and a 4-year-old daughter. Like I said, I've been in Alabama for most of my life. I did move to attend the University of Southern Mississippi in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I was there for about 6 years total, and then I moved back to Alabama. So I guess you could say I'm just an Alabama girl at heart. Of course, I have my doctorate from South College. I've noticed that there are several WGU students who attend South College after attending WGU. I think a lot of the instructors also were from WGU as well. So that's been a pipeline that I've seen as well. But did receive my doctorate last year. I defended my dissertation. And I also do have a project management professional certification, and my background is in, aerospace, tech, and, solar and renewable energy. And just as a welcome, I'd like to let everyone know that a pivot doesn't mean you failed. It's not considered a failure. It's basically a recalibration. So I look at being able to pivot as taking everything that you've learned up to a certain point, using the knowledge that you've learned and applying it as a path forward. So I'll share all the twists and turns and everything that happened, the moments of doubt and all the breakthroughs that came when I did decide to choose to pivot with a purpose. So I have about 13 years total of experience, just general work experience. Like I said earlier, I completed my bachelor's degree at the University of Southern Mississippi in interdisciplinary studies. That was not the original plan. I would say I started out with the pivots real early in life. My initial dream was to become a nurse, then eventually go into being a doctor. And about 2 weeks into geriatric clinicals, I realized that I did not like touching people as much as I thought I would. So with all of the science and math courses that I had already taken and gained knowledge in nursing school, I decided to just cut that in half and have that as a minor and then go in for business for the other. So my bachelor's degree is interdisciplinary because it's focused on science and health, but also on business as well. So after I received my bachelor's degree, I moved back home to Alabama and reached out to a recruiter at also at around 9 p.m. at night, which I typically I wouldn't do that. I try to email during business hours, but I was working overnight at a hotel, and I'm not sure if any of you have any experience in that area, but it gets to be kind of spooky sometimes, and it's really quiet, and just something that you do if you just have to do it. So I was working night audit, and I sent out an email, and he replied the next morning and said that they didn't have any positions open at the time. So, I took it as, well, I guess I tried. And about 2 days later, I received a call, and I was asked to come in for an interview for a recruiter role. So I started out there in recruiting. I got the offer, and that was really my first career, as people say, my first big girl job. I worked in that role for about a year and a half, and I realized that I did like recruiting, but I was hiring in a lot of young project managers and coordinators, and they were making a lot more money than I was at the time. So I decided to reach out to some of my network at my current job at Austal, and I asked them, if there's a way that I could transition over to work out, in project coordination. And a role was actually open, and I was able to interview well and get that role based on my network. I feel like had I not done a great job as a recruiter, I wouldn't have probably been able to transfer over into project coordination or anything in that in that field without having that reputation of being a hard worker. So that's really where I got my start to start me where I am today. I started out, like I said, in the shipyard. Those were some really hot, long days. I worked with about 80 men. I was the only woman on the team, but I held it together. I think I was the glue that held most of the days together. We went on sea trials and participated in lots of events that involved selling or transferring ships over to the Navy. I did that role for about 5 years. And after 5 years, it just kind of hit a lull. There was not many paths to grow. So I decided to take a step out. And that's how I got into contracting. So I got a role at NASA as a project engineer. And I felt like, the stars had aligned. I was miraculously at NASA. And that's a place that I had never really imagined working at because I thought it was all like, astronauts, things like that. But it actually turned out to be a very great role. I worked with a lot of very intelligent engineers, worked on a lot of facility redevelopment. And that's really where I began like my project management career. In that role, I managed about 80 different project schedules, all in different phases. I did that contract for roughly a year and a half, and then I got a permanent role at Entergy in New Orleans. So at this time, I had relocated to the Slidell, Louisiana area, and yeah, so I was in Louisiana for a bit. Worked there at Entergy for about 3 years, and COVID hit. So there I was, in New Orleans with two kids by myself. And yeah, I was ready to come home. So while I was working remote, I relocated back home. And about 6 months into that relocation, I was told that we needed to come back to the office. It's too late. I'd already moved. It's sold my house. So I resigned. I was not going to move back to Louisiana. So I ended up kind of taking a full circle moment and reconnected with some people from Austin and was able to get a job with General Dynamics where I ended up working on some of the programs at Austin. So I was familiar with the ship. I was familiar with the product schedule, the program schedules, and was able to hit the ground running and get into that role and continue working remote. After a while, I did kind of reach out. I wanted to continue my growth. So I got a lead scheduling role over at Silicon Ranch, which it wasn't necessarily a startup, but it is a solar power company in Nashville. So I started there, and the department was still very new. So I was able to come in and basically help with aligning the department on how we structure the scheduling, how we'd handle processes and procedures in regard to proper schedule management. The role was great, but there wasn't as much fast growth. So I was actually laid off in that role. I was really shocked to be laid off because that was really my first time ever encountering a layoff. Didn't really know what to do at the time because I really did enjoy the work, but I knew that there wasn't as much growth at that point in time. But about 2 weeks after my layoff, I was contacted via email from someone from Google. I literally thought it was a scam because I had never applied to Google. I was always told that that was a place that was just, the stars just have to align perfectly for you to get at Google. It's just almost impossible. So I never applied. And she told me that they were interested in, talking with me based on my background, that I would be a great fit for a role there. I took the opportunity, interviewed well, and I did receive an offer for a global program manager for product development scheduling for a Google data center. That is a mouthful, and it is just as intense as the title is. Went into the role and basically going into revamp the program management strategy for the product development team. Very critical piece of Google, I'd say, is the data center. So it was very high visibility. I worked with teams in the APAC region, in the EMEA region. So I was almost around the clock with my work hours. I'd have to wake up early, or we'll say 2 a.m. to do a presentation to leadership, and then be back online at 7, 8 a.m. to continue the rest of my workday. So the days were long. The work was fairly intense, I'd say, but I do feel like I was there on a great mission. But one thing I will say, as much as I love my work, and I pride myself on being at Google for the length of time that I was there, I will say that a part of growth is restructuring and reorganization, which is unfortunately what did happen to me on my journey. I was caught in a reorg. So with that, life happens. I think with this reorg though, and not being at Google, I took my ego took a hit. I'll be honest with you guys. There's something about working at one of the number one companies in the world that even if you're not a person that's prideful, or a person who even thinks about having a big ego, it does something to say, oh, I work at Google. Oh, I work at Microsoft. I work at the big companies that everybody knows. You get a sense of pride from that. But one thing that I learned in that process was that your role doesn't define you. Like, who are you outside of, your place of employment? And that's something that I've, really worked to find. And I do feel like I'm there. I have since started to work for myself as a program management consultant, and I've been doing that now. Actually, for a while, I was also doing some side consulting as well while working at Google. So I was also building my network, and I didn't become unemployed. I was already working on, taking a leap of faith and betting on myself during that same time. So I will say that did work to my advantage, and I was able to continue with what I've been doing and work growing my consulting portfolio as well. So there's just a journey of, a lot of the pivots that I've made. And I will say, the first pivot from Ulster to NASA, I would say that was the biggest one for me. And I say that because I was a young mom. I had 2 kids, and I had just recently, 6 months prior to that role, I bought my first house. So I was living in Mobile, Alabama with my first house. And then I received the offer to move to Slidell, Louisiana. And most people are like, you just bought a house, you can't move. Oh, yes, I can. So I did. I took a chance, and I said, I don't know that an opportunity like this would come back around. I feel like now is the time for me to take that chance. And I know that if I do get this opportunity, I'm going to continue to go. I'm going to continue to grow, and I'm going to do great things. So that's what I did. I bet on myself, and I can say since then it's been, been a few pitfalls here and there, like I said, but overall, I feel like the outcome has been extremely successful for myself and my family. So one thing that really helped me along the way, throughout my career, was adopting learning as a lifestyle. I always tell almost everyone I meet that I'm a lifelong learner. I consider myself to be a lifelong learner. In fact, last week I re-enrolled at WGU to get a certificate in data analytics. So I'm back in, even though I do have my doctorate, I'm back in the saddle. So I'm back doing classes now. But like I said, I completed my bachelor's degree in 2012. And then there's a pretty big gap between, my bachelor's and my master's. And I'll be honest, I attempted my master's degree twice during that 10-year span, and it just was not the right time for me. And I knew that I wanted it, but sometimes no, or when something doesn't work out, it doesn't mean that it won't ever work out. It's just that, you have to be in the right place in the right time sometimes for it to work out well. So at the time that I attended Western Governors University, I had a bit more time on my hands to focus, and I was able to complete my master's degree in 21 days. And I know everyone says 21 days. How is that even possible? I literally ate, slept, and breathed my work. I was constantly writing, doing assignments, but I also feel that the style of learning, which is competency based, worked in my favor because a lot of the tests and the assessments, I was able to pass those on the first day of joining the class because my experience gave me the knowledge to go in and pass those courses the first day. So I think that was a big help in accelerating through the MSML program. Once I finished, I took about a year off, and I wanted to get my doctorate. I knew that I wanted to continue. I started out at Walden. Walden is, first off, is great. I enjoyed my time there, but the pace for me was not really going to work really with my lifestyle. I wanted to be able to continue competency based, and I found South College. And initially, I was a little hesitant because I had not heard much about South College, so I did my research, and I met with Dr. Patrick, and we spoke, and he was actually previously at WGU, so I felt like that was the sign. Like, okay, I can do this. So initially I wanted to complete my DBA in a year, but life happens. Still around that time, sick babies, myself, catching things from them, and just you're working, focused on work and work travel, life happened. But I did complete my doctorate in a year and a half overall. And before I started my doctorate, I did get my PMP certification as well. Actually, before I received my master's, I completed the PMP certification. So I did have that as well, and that has been beneficial in my career. But throughout all of that, I think I just I never really the urge to learn never really leaves me. I always try to find something new. I've started venturing into working with Claude. Not too sure if you all have heard about it. It's kind of hard to miss it if you're on LinkedIn. But I have started using Claude, which is responsible for this beautiful presentation that you all are looking at today. So like I said, this presentation, I put in all of my information, and this was built in about 2 minutes. So shout out to Claude for coming through for that. But I say that to say that always be open to learning new things and open to new technology, because it really is. I used to say a thing of the future, or it's on the way, but it's here now. So during my career, educationally and professionally, I really had to understand what pivoting was, because I'm the type of person, I take things personal a lot of times when it's not necessarily personal. A lot of things is just business or just the way life works. And so a few things that I did learn was, one is that pivots really reveal your transferable power. So I come across people who say, how did you get into project management from HR? Well, if you think about it, if you're a recruiter, like I was, that's a lot of projects to manage. Each person I considered a project, because you have to walk them through a complete life cycle. You start with an interview, you work through the interview process, you may have to schedule other interviews, there may be some testing involved. And once you extend an offer letter, there's post work. So say closeout work, which would include your drug testing, and background checks. And then after that, you're onboarded. So I would consider that to be a fully closed out project. So there's transferable skills there in HR directly over into project management. But every skill that you have that you gained, find a way to make that relative to another career path if you're interested in that. One other thing was that discomfort is a direction arrow. So when you feel like something's not right, pay attention to that. That's data. I use that a lot of times when I'm at a crossroad to help guide me in a way that I would be happy and not just follow a paycheck. I think that was also one thing that I learned as well, was that a lot of my career choices initially, I was focused on the pay. I was focused on the money. Of course, that's very important because we all have families or obligations that we have to take care of. But at the same time, the happiness while earning that paycheck does really weigh a lot more than we think, because after work, if you can't relax with your family because you're worried about a meeting tomorrow, or you're worried about an uncomfortable conversation that you have with a manager, or job security even, psychological safety is important. That's a big factor in your happiness when you're working. So I use any type of discomfort that I have as, data for me to make my next move if there's one that I need to make. And then another is that credentials do open doors, but confidence walks through the door for you. Um, I thought when I had my DBA, I was like, oh yeah, I made it, this is it. But you know, it's great to have a DBA, but if I wasn't confident enough to, go into an interview with Google and explain to them that while I don't have a tech background, I do have this experience, or I do believe that, based on the roles and the experience and the recommendations that I have from my peers and management, that I can come into this job and do well. I don't think that I've been given that opportunity if I didn't believe in myself or have the confidence to deliver those messages when speaking with the hiring team. But I think confidence is a big key. And a lot of times, even if you don't have a DBA, I've seen where, people who don't have a degree at all can come into a management role and just be a complete rock star and run circles around people who do have a lot of degrees. So I would say that aside from, your credentials, have the confidence as well. And then also, one other thing is to, you know, focus on your progress over being perfect. I'm the type, I don't always have everything, figured out. Of course, when you get in certain rooms, you want to make sure that you give the illusion that you have it put together, but you don't always have to have everything figured out. Sometimes you just have to go. And that's how I live. I do my best to be as prepared as possible. But in some cases, you have to consider, you need to make progress instead of focus on perfection, because focusing only on perfection or moving when you feel something is perfect can significantly delay your progress, whether it's career, relationship, education. Waiting for things to be perfect can sometimes delay you actually making progress. So, just a little bit of advice for y'all, to help you on your pivots, is to own your WGU degree. Competency based is rigorous, and for whatever reason, I can't explain. Most people think that it's not as rigorous as it is, and they're surprised once they step into the life of competency based learning that is very intense. You should own that and be proud to be at WGU. Be proud that you're taking more ownership, and to say that I have experience and I'm applying my experience to gain more education. So you mastered the material on your own terms, which is a leadership skill. This is absolute leadership skill that you should highlight. And then stack your credentials strategically. So, my MSML was my launch pad. I added on, other degrees, my doctorate in business administration, my PMP, but they speak to what you're trying to pivot toward. So also with me adding on the certification for data analytics, this is going to help me to work my way into, data science, any type of data analysis type work if I'm interested in that, for independent consulting, because those are really, sought after roles at the moment. Also, tell your pivot story. Don't be afraid to share your story, where you started and, where you are. Employers do want a narrative. They want to know what you overcame to get to where you are. They want to know, what you learned. If you encounter setbacks, what you learned from that setback, what you do differently. And these are questions that I'm often asked in interviews. It's what did you learn from that process? What are you doing differently moving forward? But be able to articulate why you changed directions, what you've gained, and where you're going. But also in doing that, you need to be confident as well. And then network inside your pivot. One thing is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is, where I've met tons of amazing people. I try to connect with people who do the same type of work that I do and the same type of work that I like to do. And I ask questions, whether it's on posts that I see someone may post that I'm interested in. I'd make comments and ask questions, and ask for time. Hey, do you have 15 minutes for a chat? I'd like to have a coffee sometime. So just show up and be available, and put yourself out there. And then lastly, start before you feel ready. Like I said earlier, I didn't have everything figured out. But action creates that clarity for you. Once you start, you'll figure your way out. So just reach out to people and refine your processes as you go. And I think that's really how you gain confidence. And a few things that I've learned, of course, is clarity. Um, when you pivot, you really have to take an honest look at yourself and figure out what you really want, and making those pivots and those changes will really be a guide for you in the future. That's how I move about every day. Once I was caught in the reduction in force or the reorg at Google, that really shook me because I was chasing the dollars. I was chasing the validation of a big company. Once I got in, I was just addicted to the prestige, and I wasn't at my full, I guess you could say, amount of happiness that I felt like I could have because I was so consumed with my work. One of the first things that I did when I like the day after, I was like, oh, I booked a vacation. Went out of town. I took my kids, my mom. We went on a week-long vacation and we had a wonderful time. And I realized that a lot of that was missing from my life, being able to actually relax and laugh and not worry about, issues at work, or, spend time when I could be asleep, or, checking on my kids. I'm up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning for work. And it just really helped me put into view where I needed to focus more of my time, and more of that time needed to be focused on family. Um, and also, I learned that skills do transfer. Nothing that I've ever learned was wasted. Even looking back on my nursing career, there are things that I went through in nursing that I still remember. Now that my parents are, older and in their almost 70s, there are things that I've learned that if they have an issue that I can think back on, that sounds like this, and I can go and research and I can help, kind of get them, pointed in the right direction when it comes to their healthcare. So I don't feel like there's anything that I've learned throughout my career, throughout my education, that was a waste. Every role, every class, and every experience that I've had has become a transferable asset for me. And then one other thing is, your network is your net worth. So the people who believed in me and my pivot, they helped me open doors that I didn't know existed. There have been times that I've had, older colleagues or someone to reach out to someone else on my behalf, and I never knew about it. So when you work somewhere, you build solid relationships and you connect with people who believe in you and will go the extra mile for you, that really can help shape your career and your path forward as well. And like I said earlier, progress over perfection. So move anyway. If you're not sure, think about it, weigh the pros and cons, and continue to move forward. And I think that pretty much sums up everything for me. Thank you all for being here and taking time to listen to my story. I know I shared most about my career, but one thing that I really haven't told many people is how I really started. I grew up in a small town in Alabama. And when I say small, I mean there's probably 700 people there. You can think or guess as far as like the income levels and things of that nature. But when I left home for college with my undergrad, I had $20. That's all I had when I left to go out of state to another state to go to college. $20. Um, a lot of people would have used that as an excuse to not go anywhere, but I was so hungry for more. I wanted to be more. I wanted to do something great. I took that chance anyway. I would say that's probably the biggest pivot in my life, is just taking a chance or betting on myself to say that I only have $20. What am I going to do with this, and how am I going to turn that into, you know, multi six-figure salary today? So, like I said, I don't really regret anything within my experience. Everyone's is unique. But yeah, I'll open it up to questions, and I also have here on the screen ways to contact me. If you can't find me by the LinkedIn, I'm not sure if it's linked in the webinar or anything, but that is my LinkedIn, Dr. Krystel Hurd. And then my email is also here as well. I do coaching as well. So if anyone does need any assistance or any guidance or anything related to career, education, definitely reach out. I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Hurd. That was fantastic. A lot of great insight. Yeah, and I also really appreciated just the honest aspect that you plugged in as well. So, really phenomenal. We'll go ahead and open it up here for any questions. So, feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll make sure to read those out. Or if
Okay.
you'd like to come off mute, you can go ahead and raise your hand and I'll pass that over. And the chat has been very engaging, so thank you all so much for the thoughts and comments. But a lot of comments here saying thank you and talking about how inspiring your journey has been. There was one that made me laugh a little bit. Completing a master's in 21 days is crazy work.
I was crazy after. I literally had to take some time to just be away from everybody and decompress.
I get that. I get that. And then yes, I did drop your LinkedIn in the chat as well, so that should take you directly to Dr. Krystel Hurd's LinkedIn there.
Thank you.
Let's see here. A question from Victoria. Have you previously or are you open to being a mentor? I would love to connect with you.
I am. I've been asked a few times to do mentorship. So if that's something you're interested in, I'm definitely happy to meet with you on that. Sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Hurd. Great question. Yeah. As mentioned, LinkedIn is a great place to connect. That's how me and Dr. Hurd got connected. I think it was on a similar post that she had commented, and she's like, I'm a WGU alumni. And I was like, oh my gosh, her story looks great. Like, let me get to know her. And another key part about being a mentor or being a mentee, I would love to share is, what are your goals as well? So, as a mentee, um, bringing your skills and what your career goals are, so that you have some sort of pathway, not just like, oh, here's my skills and what I've done in the past 5 years. Like, what do you think? The person can only coach you or guide you as much as you're willing to take a look and reflect, like Dr. Hurd mentioned. Next question here. Did you use Claude Design to build your presentation?
I did. Well, you know what? I can't say that it was Claude Design. I was working on it last night and I had it already built and I just could not get it to look how I wanted it to look. So I got on Claude and my brother actually referred me to it. He said, get on Claude, download the desktop app. So I think it was like Claude.ai. But I downloaded the application onto my computer and I just put in all of my information, my PowerPoint and everything, and just dropped it in and it was created in like 10 minutes. It even added in my email and everything. So yeah, it was fairly quick. I would say 2 minutes. But my brother uses it for his day-to-day to work. So yeah, that's what I did. And it turned out great. I actually think it's really nice. So
It
yeah.
looks fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. We'll give it another minute or so here for questions, but there's a lot of great comments here in the chat too, just saying this is wonderful, very inspiring. Appreciate you sharing your experience. Great presentation. Um, Very inspiring. I'm going through a challenging time, and this inspired me at a perfect time. Oh, love to hear that. Thank you so much for joining. Some LinkedIn connections there. I know one question our students tend to have want to get a little bit more insight on is imposter syndrome. So as you're
Yes.
moving through, yes, either like a career change or wanting to take a bold move, but feeling that imposter syndrome, do you have any tips or tricks on how they can approach that?
Sure. So that's a good question. I too have suffered from imposter syndrome, and I still do at times. I feel like I do. But one thing I try to keep in mind is that uh, for the majority of us who are working professionals, a lot of us live almost the same life when you think about the things that we do on a day-to-day basis. You work, you may have a family, or you're starting a family or wanting to start a family. I think we all have like similar things. We start our day, we go through the work day, you get off work, you go home. You may work out, you may not, may Netflix. However, so I think I say that to say the only thing that really makes us different per se, maybe the job title. And I'm referring to like career wise. So there's not really a lot different. There may be a senior VP who has the same exact issue that you may have in their personal life. So the only thing that really separates you guys at that point is the job title. Or educationally, I struggled with feeling like I had the right to call myself a doctor after I received my doctorate. And I know that sounds strange, but I know that I did the work. I did the work. I was up sometimes all night long and then having to clock in for work after researching, looking for sources all night. I know that I did the work, and I was speaking to a friend of mine. They're like, "You worked hard for this. You absolutely deserve to call yourself doctor." And I changed my title at work on my email. That was the first thing I did. And somebody was like, "Oh my gosh, you have your doctorate!" And it just kind of started out that way, and it built up my confidence. But I think a lot of times, if you say something out loud, if you have somebody that you confide in and that you can look to for guidance in that area, but I'll talk to them as well, but also realize that we're all on the same journey. We're all trying to be better than the person we were yesterday. We all have goals that we want to achieve. Although they may be different, we're all having to do the same work. So I would say with imposter syndrome, it's there. It exists. Even, celebrities, everybody has it. But I think one thing that helps is being prepared. I used to feel that way in meetings. Like before meetings, I would be nervous to the point that, I'd be physically sweating. I'd be trembling. I'd be nervous. My voice would be shaking. And I realized, a lot of the people on the call, they have meetings that they're also nervous about. My managers have meetings that they're nervous about. But I think that going in and being as prepared as you can help alleviate some of that imposter syndrome as well.
I love that. I echo that as well. A lot of times, if it's something unknown, I'll try my best to prepare, and at least that way you've kind of done the prep work and you just hope for the best.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, next question here. Are there specific pointers that you have for adapting current work experience on resume for someone looking to switch careers? In other words, how do you best market yourself to an industry you don't have experience in yet?
That's a good question. So that's really where I was, and I would say for me, I did rely on my network. So in my case, when I got into project management from HR, like I said earlier, I looked at each person that I hired as a project, and there were times where I had like high volume roles to fill where I had 110 new hires. So that's 110 projects in different phases at one time, and I basically was able to discuss how I walked each person through that life cycle. That's a project cycle. If you can make your experience relatable or transferable, and one thing I was able to do was, hey, ask AI, ask ChatGPT or Claude, how do these skills relate to this career? How can I make the skills that I have right now relate to the path that I want to take? And then also, if you don't necessarily have, like, if you're, I'm trying to find skills that really aren't, but it's hard to say because I think most skills are transferable. It's more or less the way you explain it. Is where the most people have trouble doing. Um, so yeah, I would say find something relatable. As far as maybe doing searches on Chat GPT. Hey, let's change these responsibilities that I've had at this job over to something that will align with this role that I'm interested in. Make it make sense though. If it's something that you've done, if you've been, say, a stay-at-home mom, you're managing a program, and that's one of the hardest programs to manage, full of unpredictability, lots of different things that can come up and arise, and come up with delays. So there's ways to list your experience out to make it relatable. Also stack in like certifications and credentials. If there's an area that you're interested in, check to see if there's a certification available in that area. Get the certification. If it's not anything that's out, that's like extremely expensive or something that you feel that you may not use. But I would say stack on the certifications. I necessarily wouldn't go back for myself at this point to go get another bachelor's degree, but I did consider it before I did the certification. So like I said, stack on the certifications, do your research and see if there's anything out there that's available to add that as well. And then make sure that your, responsibilities at work, you're able to kind of reword those to make them, relatable to what you're looking for.
Yes, awesome insight there. Um, We'll just give another minute here for questions. I do see LinkedIn's being shared, so that's fantastic. I'll drop in the chat one more time. We do have that quick survey. It's just 2 questions, and this helps us continue to bring great sessions to the WGE community, just like this one. And then the second link here will be for Dr. Krystel Hurd's LinkedIn Connect, so feel free to take both those links there and you can do the survey, and then feel free to connect with Dr. Krystel Hurd as well. And then if you do think of a question later on, you can always email us, or if you connect with Dr. Hurd on LinkedIn, you can always reach out via LinkedIn. But at this time, I don't see any other questions coming through. So we can go ahead and wrap up today's session. Thank you all so much for being here and for the great engagement throughout. Dr. Hurd, thank you again for your time and sharing your story and insight. Your journey was such a powerful reminder that career growth doesn't have to be linear. Sometimes the most meaningful opportunities come from staying curious and asking questions and taking bold steps. I know a lot of students and alumni right now are navigating some pivots or searching for their next career opportunities, have a lot of questions about what next steps can look like. So having a fellow night owl share such honest and inspiring perspective is incredibly invaluable. So we'll be sending that recording out shortly once it's ready, along with that quick survey. And then if you could fill that out for us, that would be fantastic. And of course, we'd like to extend our WGU thank you to Dr. Krystel Hurd here. Thank you so much for your time and being with us. We
Thank
truly
you.
appreciate, you supporting just the fellow students and alumni through your experience and just hearing your story too. And like I think Garrett mentioned in the chat, 21 days to complete your master's is crazy work, but I said it was top tier ambition. So
Yeah.
we thoroughly enjoyed getting to learn and hear about your experience. So thank you again for joining us. And for everyone else, thanks for being here. We hope you enjoyed the session as well. And other than that, hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.